This video is going to be modeling for you some estimation strategies. One of them will be reviewing rounding, and then I will be introducing you to two new strategies. In third grade, we use estimation to check for reasonableness. So we've already solved the problem with the actual numbers, and now we're going to solve it again, but with easier numbers, and then we can check to see if our original work is reasonable, if the estimate and the actual solution is if they're close to each other. So here I've already solved this problem with the third grade teachers having $800, and they spent $289 on books, $75 on pencils, $327 on iPad apps. So I've already found that their total amount of spending is $691, and the question is how much money do they have left to spend. So I've now subtracted the total price from the amount they have, and I found that the actual amount of money that they have left over to spend is $109. So now I'm going to use three different estimation strategies to check for reasonableness. And I will also be talking to you about which ones are more realistic or get you better results, more accurate estimates. So here's just a review on rounding. When you remember, you can round to multiple place values, but the smaller the place value you choose, the more accurate you're going to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and round to the nearest 10 because I know that that's more accurate than rounding to the nearest 100. So here I'm going to add 200. I'm going to round 289 to the nearest 10. So if you remember, 289 is in between 200 and is in between 280 and 290. And the midpoint right here is 285. 289 is right here, so it would round to 290. 75 here is in between 70 and 80. The midpoint is 75. That is my number, so it would round to 80. And then 327 is in between 320, 330. The midpoint is 325. My number is after that, so it would round to 330. So now I'm going to add 290, 80, and 330. 20. And 3, 4, 5, 700. So it's telling me I have about $700 to spend. So when I subtract the money I have minus about $700 that I want to spend, I have about $100 left. And when I check for reasonableness, I see that those are pretty close. One great reason to use rounding for your estimation strategy is it's consistent. There are specific rules for rounding, so my estimate is going to be the exact same as someone else if they use the rounding steps. So that's one positive to the rounding strategy, is it's very consistent between me and my estimate and your estimate. They're going to be the same. Now let's look at convenient or friendly numbers. One positive to convenient or friendly numbers is it's flexible. It lets me use what I'm comfortable with because that's what convenient and friendly is all about. It's numbers that work well together. And so it's kind of how my brain works with numbers, but someone else might choose different numbers as convenient or friendly for them. So let me show you how this works. I've already, again, found my actual. So now I'm going to use numbers that work well for me, and you'll see that they model after numbers that work well with our place value system. So a lot of times you'll use numbers that end in 5 or 10s or maybe 25s. It just kind of depends on the situation. So here for 289, I'm going to use 290 because that's just a little bit easier to work with. Someone might use 285 if they wanted to do that. But the further you get away from the actual number, the less accurate your estimate is going to be, or the further away your estimate might be from the actual. So just keep that in mind. So I'm just going to use 290 because it's kind of making it a nice equal 10. 75, I'm going to leave it just the way that it is because 5s work well with 10s. And then 327, this is where you could be flexible. Someone might do 325, someone else might do 330. Either one will work because they're both pretty close. So I'm going to choose 330 for mine. And again, you'll see I've chosen numbers that all have, equal groups of 10 or some 5s in the ones place. So now I'm going to find my total amount that we're going to spend here. $695 is what I'm spending. So now I'm going to take my 800, which is already a pretty convenient number, and I'm going to subtract what we're spending. Oh, I need to do some ungrouping here. Okay, so I have 5 ones, no 10s, and 100. So here I have found that I have about $105 left. And when I compare it, I am very reasonable. I'm actually more reasonable with this strategy than I was with rounding. But if someone else had used different friendly numbers, their estimate might not have been as close. So that's where there's a little bit of a negative to this strategy, is that people can get different estimates. But it's positive because it lets you work with numbers that are best for you and what you're comfortable with. All right, front-end estimation. Front-end estimation is a great strategy because it's quick, and you'll see why, but it can be very inaccurate. So front-end estimation means you are going to use the largest place value of that number, and everything else is going to go to a 0. So I'll show you here. 289 is just going to go to 200. And you can already maybe start to see that if we were using rounding, it would actually round to 300. And I'm going all the way to 200 because that's my largest place value. 289 would go front end to 200. 75 would go to 70. And 327 would go to 300. So if I add up here how much money we are estimating we are going to spend, it's $570. Now I need to subtract that 570 spent dollars from the amount we have, which is already a front-end estimated number, 800. So here, all right, let me ungroup a little bit here. So my front-end estimation is showing me that I have about $230 left to spend, which is not reasonable. It is not even close to the actual amount. So you'll see front-end was quick, because you're really only using one place value in each, but it can be very inaccurate. The times when front end works well is if the rest of your number is close to that front end that you would put it at. So if this number was 205 and I went to 200, that's not a big difference. But here I'm taking away 89, and here I'm taking away 27 to go to 300. So it's quick, but it can actually be very inaccurate. So here are 3 strategies to use for assessing reasonableness, which means you first solved the problem with actual numbers, then you are solving in the same exact steps, but with estimated numbers, whether you've rounded them, you've used convenient numbers, or you've used front-end estimation. And then the last step is you compare them. Pretty reasonable, even more reasonable, and not reasonable at all. So go ahead and go through those 3 steps when you are assessing reasonableness.